In this lesson, we're going to expand to all transformations of functions, and so now we're going to include three more. In addition to our shifts, we're going to be including reflections, stretches, and shrinks, and then we're going to do those on a general graph today. Now, first we want to pull out our handout where we have our other transformations. We're going to jump down to the new ones, and our first one is when we have a negative on the outside, and that is going to give us a reflection over the x-axis. Now you might say to me, okay, what's on the outside is always affects vertical, but I want you to see that when we reflect over the x-axis, it's like a vertical motion because we're reflecting over the x-axis. That dot moves up and down. When we have the negative on the inside, that's going to be a reflection over the y-axis. And again, we can see that when we reflect over the y-axis, we take this dot and reflect over the y-axis, it's actually a horizontal motion, which is what we expect when something is on the inside of the parentheses. In our next one, we're multiplying by a number c on the outside, and that's going to be a vertical stretch. And we might say that we're multiplying by c because we're going to stretch it by a factor of c. Our next one, our c is between 0 and 1, so numbers like 1/2 and 1/3. And in that case, we are actually going to have a vertical shrink. And in these cases, we're actually dividing by c. In the next one, we're on the inside, and so this is going to be horizontal. But remember, what happens inside the parentheses is the opposite of what you would expect. So when we multiply by a big number, it's actually going to be a horizontal shrink. And we're going to divide by c. And here, when my number is between 0 and 1, I'm actually going to stretch it. And so that's going to be a horizontal stretch where we multiply by c. All right, so with those rules, you should now have your handout for the homework assignment. And so you want this handout because it's a lot of graphs and it'll be easier this way. And we're going to do 3 of the problems as your notes. So you should have your handout now. And we're on number 54. So find number 54, and on your handout you already have the 3 graphs. These are straight from your book. And our first one, we are looking at y equals negative f of x. And you'll recall that when we do negative f of x, that's a reflection over the x-axis. So we're going to take each of these points, and they've labeled points for us, and let's start to the left. Negative 4, 0, when I reflect it, it actually stays right on the x-axis. This one, negative 2, 3, is going to go down to negative 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to be down here at negative 2, negative 3. 2, 1 goes to 2, negative 1. And 6, 1 goes to 6, negative 1. And now I can just connect the dots and try and make it look similar to that. And there we go. We've got a reflection over the x-axis. In B, we've got the negative on the inside. So that's going to be a reflection over the y-axis. So now this negative 4, 0 ends up at 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. Our negative 2, 3 ends up at 2, 3. Our 2, 1 goes back over here to negative 2, 1. And our 6, 1 all the way to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 6, 1. And here we go, like that. And there we go. We can see that reflection over the y-axis. All right, our third one, y equals 3 times f of x. That's going to be a vertical stretch. And we're going to multiply times 3 on this one. And when we do this, let's start over here. What we're doing is we're multiplying the y coordinate. So when we say multiply, I'm saying multiply the y by 3. So in this first one, 0 times 3 is still 0, and so it actually just stays right on the x-axis. Whereas this next one, negative 2, 3, is going to be way up here at negative 2, 9. 2, 1 is going to end up at 2, 3. And 6, 1 is going to end up at 6, 3. You'll notice the x's didn't change, only the y's. And when we draw this one, and this will be tricky on this. Let me try again. Let's see. There we go, like that. All right, and that gives a somewhat good graph. It's really hard to draw on these boards. All right, so our last part is question D, and I want to make sure you don't miss this. There is a question D right there that asks us, what is f of 4? And f of 4 is not any of these. This was negative f of negative x, 3 of f of x. Those are the ones in purple and red and green. F of 4 is in blue. So we're going to go to our original graph. And when we say f of 4, we're saying that my input, which is my x, is 4. And I'm asking for my output, which is my y. So I go to my graph. Here's x equal to 4. I go up to my graph, and I can see that my y value is 1. So my answer will be 1. All right, let's go to our next problem. So go to number 58 on your sheet. That's the next one we're going to look at. And we're going to start over here with choice A again. So when we have f of 2x, we're going to be doing a horizontal shrink. Because remember, on the inside, when we multiply by 2, it's actually going to cut everything in half. The one thing that's not going to move is this, right on the y-axis, because my x-coordinate is 0, it's going to stay right there. And I want you to see these points actually refer to those. So this point out here is at negative 2. It's going to come here at negative 1. And this point here at negative 1 is going to come in at 1/2. This one out here at 2 is going to come to 1. And this one here at 1 is going to go to 1/2. And so when we're done, not only did the thing shrink to half the width, it all got closer to the y-axis because we basically multiplied every x-coordinate by 1/2. Now let's look at our next one. In our next one, in B, we are doing f of negative x. So we're going to flip or reflect. We've been using the word reflect. So we're going to reflect over the y-axis. Now when we reflect and we start using our points, you'll notice that this point here lands right there. This point lands over here. This bottom point lands over here. This one lands over here. And this one stays right where it is. Same thing if I go over here, this point lands over here. This one over here. This one over here. And this one over here. And you can see when we reflected over the y-axis, we ended up with the same graph that we started with. All right, let's go to C. In C, we have a vertical stretch. And I'm going to make room for it on here. I'm going to shift this down. All right, so what happens is every y-coordinate gets multiplied times 3. So this one that's at a height of 1 is going to go way up here to 3. I'm going to say this is 3 up here. This one at 0 stays at 0 because 0 times 3 is 0. This one at negative 1 is going to come way down here. We'll call this negative 3 right here. 0 stays put up to 3. 0 stays put. This one goes all the way down to negative 3. This stays put. This here. So when we do the stretching, anything on the x-axis gets anchored, but everything else moves 3 times as far away. So then my graph, it is like, oops, I missed some of those dots. Let's see. Let's try that again. My graph goes through that dot, back up, through that dot, back up, through that one, and back up. Now, when you do this on your handout, you're going to probably be having to write over some words, but that's okay. It's important that you get the idea of it. All right, our last question here asks about the symmetry of f of x, and actually they all have the same symmetry. In this case, it kept the symmetry, which was that it was an even function. So it started out even, and every one of these transformations we did, it was still even, which means it has y-axis symmetry. All right, the last one we're going to do for our notes is number 62. So if you can go to number 62, And we're going to start with a right here. And here we have f of 2x, and so this is going to be a horizontal shrink. So that means that every x coordinate gets divided by 2. So here we go. Let's take this first one. My x coordinate at negative 2, 2 is going to end up at negative 1, 2. My y stays the same. This one down here at negative 1 is going to be at negative 1 half negative 1. Now here when I take half of 0, that's just 0. And down here, half of the 2 takes me to 1 negative 2. And I connect these, and you'll see with this horizontal shrink, my graph got skinnier. All right, now in this next one, we have two things going on, and you might say, which do I do first? We're going to do order of operations, which tells me I do what's inside the parentheses first. So first I'm going to do a vertical, no, not vertical, it's on the inside, so it's going to be horizontal. So I'm going to do a horizontal, and it's going to actually stretch because I am multiplying by 1 half, and so it's going to do the opposite, which is going to stretch times 2. And then I'm going to, after that, go down 1. All right, so we're going to try and do this at once. So when I do this, here's my first point at negative 2, 2. I stretch it horizontally, so my x gets double, negative 4, and my y goes down 1. So I end up here at negative 4, 1. So I doubled my x, decreased my y. Over here, double my x, so I go over here to negative 2 and decrease my y. I end up here at negative 2, negative 2. Right here, I double my x, which just stays at 0, and my y becomes 1 down, so 0, 1. And my last one, when I double my x, I end up at 4, and I go down 1. That's going to be negative 3. I'll get that a little more accurate. There we go. So 4, negative 3. And then once I have those points, I just connect them. And you can see that this is twice as wide, and it's been shifted down 1 unit. All right, so let's go to our last one here. And the 2 is on the outside this time, so we're going to have a vertical stretch. And we're also going to go down 1. Not sure why I put a negative over here, so I'm going to just do that. And there we go. That looks a little better. So here we go. Order of operations. We're going to multiply first, then go down 1. It's really important that we do this in the right order. So we have to do this first, then this. So all of this deals with the y. So I'm only looking at my y coordinate. I double it and go down 1. So I double it, I end up at 4, down 1 is at 3. So this is going to be at negative 2, 3. So look at our y here. Double it, negative 2, down 1, negative 3. So negative 1, negative 3. Here, look at my y is 4. I mean 2. I double it is 4, and down 1 takes me to 3. And then, so that's 0, 3. And my last one, my y is negative 2. I double it. That's negative 4. Down 1 is negative 5. So 2, negative 5. And now I can just connect my dots. And you're going to see that this graph got vertically stretched and then shifted down 1. All right, hopefully this gives you enough to be able to do the problems. The rest of the problems are all on your handout just to make it a little easier.